Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation today. Thanks to Glenn for getting us going into the municipal solid waste world, because we're going back to that world. We're going to be talking about electronic waste. And I'm just going to set the scene for you by telling you about where I come from and why we care about electronic waste in the way that we do. Hennepin County is about 1.2 million people. Here's a visual on it. The size, just to put it in your mind, it's about the size of the city of Los Angeles or the Amsterdam metropolitan region. Minneapolis itself is in the eastern corner of the county, and it would be rough in density to, say, Prague or Pittsburgh or Dusseldorf, if that frames it for you. Not too much more about these facts and figures, but just maybe these mean something to you. And set it in your mind, 104 lakes, lots of lakes like this. This is what I wake up to every morning. I have to tell you, I'm a lucky man.
Planning the next trip?
Nah. Actually, this is a beautiful place out in western Hennepin County, and we have lots of local delicacies like lutefisk in December, and then we have another local delicacy we like to call winter. This is an actual picture that I took one day. Don't ask me why I was thinking of taking a picture at this time, but today we're going to be talking about how we live in what I like to call a material world. And in specific, when we look at municipal solid waste, we're predominantly concerned with the end-of-life recovery. Now, over time, and this is the EPA's material, except for Madonna, where we're looking at the entire picture of how material management works. And what we're mostly concerned about is being more effective in what we do, because we realize when we get to it at the end of life, we're in trouble. And here's what I mean by that. Now, what if I told you at your job that you could be 25 times more effective? And that is what is at stake here. Just look at the typical way we look at greenhouse gas accounting. We look at by industry. It's very hard to pull the string out of that. So what the EPA has done is they're looking more at what are the systems that we're looking at, and particularly materials management, which is responsible for 42%. So the provision of goods, provision of food are responsible for 42% of our greenhouse gas emissions. But it gets better or worse. If you disaggregate the exports and the imports, the provisions of just the goods take up now 44% of this pie. So that's what I mean when I say you could be 20 times more effective than just, say, recycling. And the win on e-waste is probably more than there is on any other material. Recycling an aluminum can, that's great. But actually getting involved at the beginning of the cycle, at the top of Madonna's, tiara, that is actually way more effective when it comes to involving in the materials end of the process. So what's e-waste in the US and Canada? Typically what you think of e-waste in Canada, it's TVs, it's stereos, it's hard drives, it's hard disks, and maybe, just maybe, it'll include big copiers, some appliances, cell phones. Maybe. What's in the EU? Everything. Everything that has an electrical pulse running through it, almost, is electronic waste. So that really helps, I would have to say, for comparison, for transatlantic comparisons. If we were to widen the range of materials, that would have a real impact. When we look at how we were doing, we compared ourselves to other places in the United States and Canada. We thought we were doing really good. These are to scale, by the way, so you can perceive King County, Washington, in the Seattle area, in the lower mainland, Fraser Valley of British Columbia. We thought we were doing great, right? We have 25 collection sites. We're getting more pounds per capita in the race to sort of collect more and more. We thought we were doing great. But then we looked at how we were doing at the state level, and we had completely overblown expectations because it was just not equal across the state. We realized that people in rural counties were not doing as well, and they should have been doing better. Then we looked at how we were doing compared to Germany and the rest of Europe. We realized we were really overblown in our expectations. So we were doing last year worse than Germany was 3 years ago. And we're half where we need to be to the EU in 2016, and we don't even want to think about 2020. So we looked at some places that had a really good idea about how to handle this. And British Columbia is one place that we really identified as a place that has a long tradition of engaging the industry at the materials end of the situation and really making an impact. The key fact on this slide I want you to take away is the 2004 BC framework legislation, which basically says to the industry, we'd like you to tell us how you're going to manage this waste stream. We'd like you to present us with a material management plan. We'll approve it or disapprove it with our corrections, and then we expect you to make all the decisions about how we get rid of this problem, including the costs. And the ESABC is the Materials Management Association in Canada. It's really run like a business. It's a nonprofit, but it's run with the profit being of society. And consumer awareness, accessibility, all those sort of business type metrics that you're talking about, it's very important. And also a very important construct of this is a level playing field. One thing that we were very impressed by was the convenience metric, which is based on population and distance, not political boundaries. In the United States, everything's determined by what county you live in. That doesn't make it a difference. You cross the county line, it's still a kilometer away or a mile away. Here, it's a GIS calculation based on convenience. Another thing we really liked, bringing in from the business world, you look at key performance indicators. They have a nice, easily comparable set of measures based on how much are we getting, how easily can people get to it, how much awareness do people have, a marketing metric, which is amazingly helpful, and then how do we compare costs across different programs. But even better than this, because the private sector is driving this, they have the ability to look at individual cases. Every province has a different situation with its geography. So maybe the convenience metric needs to be changed, as it is in British Columbia versus Ontario. And then they have a tradition of reverse retail. What a nice thing to do to be able to take your bottles, get some money back for them, and other waste materials, and think of this as like a community store, if you will, for your waste. In the US, we're more used to transfer stations and sort of sterile environments. Overall suggestions, make sure you have transparency in place. If the program is not easily measurable, you don't really have an understanding of where you're at. It's pretty simple. But in a lot of state mandated programs, the trade is transparency for results. Ensure the program can change and adapt with the times. Avoid being overly prescriptive. I can't overstate this enough. Let folks make decisions based on what makes sense for the program. Don't live in that middle ground between a tax and industry-led program. Otherwise, it looks like you're just asking for money. Regulate with a focus on performance, level playing field, very important to industry. Let them have that because it's very important to them. And it also makes the program much more successful. And then finally, the visible fee, that's a matter of debate, but in British Columbia, having someone pay at the point of purchase for their advanced recycling, it helps to make sure that people know that they have a stake in making sense of their responsible reduction of waste. So to close, I just want to give you some follow-on materials that you might want to look at for Canada. Great system of websites about how they manage their return system, their annual report. It's brilliant. One of the best annual reports I've ever read in the genre. It's great. And then finally, the OECD, a great book on EPR. Amazingly, it's very humbling to know that this project began in 1994. And now we're still talking about it today, almost 20 years later. And then performance metrics, a great guide to how we develop measures on this topic. And then finally, some analysis from the United States to look at the Northwest Product Stewardship Council and how they've been doing it in Oregon and Washington. The EPA put this out, the Product Stewardship Council of the Northwest put this out. I'll be glad to send this to you later if you'd like to take a look at it, and thank you for your attention. Yeah.
How much state and or county resources go into overseeing and monitoring this program?
Well, it's hard. It's slightly difficult to say because we're focused on a lot of different materials. So a lot of times it's bundled in with other hazardous waste programs and problem material programs, specifically related to e-waste, the expenses we can draw out. I'll just say in a cost per pound, because I think that really narrows it down. It's about 20 cents per pound. Okay, and that adds up to, in our county anyway, that adds up to about $2 million for a county of 1.2 million. Okay, so those are expenses, but many of those expenses are actually reimbursed under the product stewardship arrangement that we have. We recover approximately 68% of our costs through that arrangement.
I'm just curious to what extent you were able to implement best practices that you saw in Canada into your county planning.
We're working on it. We're working on it. We're actively engaged with the industry and sort of rebuilding the trust between government and the producers. We're trying to show the benefits of this model and why it makes sense and why this is not an imposition of more costs, but a benefit to really change the materials game, because where all the win is in the materials. And so that's the dialogue that we're trying to have.
Yeah, I remember last time I did e-recycling, I drove 20 minutes, I sat in line for 30 minutes to throw something away. What are some of the innovative things people are doing to make this convenient? I mean, are there any pickup services? You know, what's going to make people who aren't otherwise inclined to do this go do it?
Well, I suppose I should have looked more at what we do in Hennepin County, because in Minneapolis there's curbside pickup of electronics. You can put it out in the back. Now that leads to a lot of scavenging, but it's reused. We'd prefer it be reused. I don't know where it's. I doubt people are taking it just to dump it. So they actually don't care. But in the Twin Cities, the 25 collection sites that are in Hennepin County, only 2 of those are county run. Okay, the rest of them are retail locations. Best Buy has its headquarters in Minneapolis, and so we've got 10 locations in the county, and then you've got Staples and some various other locations. So the retail take-back model is actually a really popular one because it encourages people to come in. They can drop it off for free. They don't have to buy something. It just gets foot traffic in the store. So, and Best Buy is really a huge partner, and really the only place nationwide in the United States where you can take almost anything, no matter where you bought it, for free. We'd like to see more of that. Is that it? Thanks.